What's up, fellas? In today's video, we got a good old-fashioned rant because there were some comments made recently by Draymond Green about a, quote, double standard that he believes exists in the NBA and in professional sports in general as it relates to trade circumstances around a player. And they're controversial, but I believe that he's 100% right, and I'm going to be making the case why in today's video. But quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. My name's Tucker, by the way. I upload NBA content twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well if you're enjoying it, and I have a link tree down in the description below for all of my socials if you guys want to follow me on there. With all those things said, let's go and get started. So let's kind of talk about exactly what Draymond said, and then I'll get into kind of my take. So I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially Draymond's making the case that the perception of teams and players, specifically as it relates to trade situations, are way different. And in the case of James Harden specifically, he faced a lot of criticism for wanting to leave Houston and for requesting a trade about as publicly as you can without actually publicly requesting a trade. And in contrast to some situations that are currently going down in the league right now as it relates to Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin, where those teams have told those players, we're going to sit you and we're going to try and figure out a trade for you, those teams haven't faced nearly the same level of criticism as James Harden did when he requested a trade, when essentially they're the same thing. One player wants to be traded, the other two are being told, you're going to be traded or you've played your last game for the team. But the level of criticism there isn't the same, and Draymond points out that as the double standard that exists in the league and goes on to expand on those comments. Now, it's critical to point out at this point, he's not defending James Harden. He's not defending the way that Harden handled his trade situation, and in fact, he points out that he did not handle it correctly, and that there was certainly a level of disrespect shown by James Harden to the Houston organization, and arguably the most egregious example of a player, kind of going against a team that did about as much as they could for him over the last couple of seasons and then asking to be traded. So that point is acknowledged, and James Harden did not handle that situation well at all. But the case being made here as an example of a double standard is that if a team had acted in the not in the exact same way, but a same level of disrespect was shown by a team to a player, that team would not get the same level of criticism that James Harden got for asking to be traded. And I think Draymond's right about that part. I think that double standard certainly does exist. And I think that these comments caught some people off guard because by and large, the NBA is the most player progressive professional league, especially in the States. And, it's just odd for some people to hear a player continually push for, being on the side of the players in a league that is, as player progressive as you can get. But I think Draymond is spot on with these comments. And I think it's really smart of him to acknowledge that, yes, Harden didn't handle the situation well, but there are a lot of other examples in cases of teams not treating a player well and not facing that same level of criticism that a player would have. For example, you go back to the Isaiah Thomas situation, how the Celtics handled that and how this guy was clearly hurt. He did everything for that team and then they just traded him away, cost him a lot of money. They get criticized for it, but not nearly on the same level that James Harden was criticized. Then you go back to the LA Clippers who, they said that Blake Griffin was their guy. They re-signed him to this contract. And then not too long after that, they traded him away to Detroit after he signed this long-term deal and committed to the franchise. And those are just, a few examples. And it goes back, he even mentions Kyrie, which I think is another player that, people immediately, when you using James Harden and Kyrie Irving as his points to kind of defend the statement that he was making, for a lot of people was an immediate turnoff and they're just they're not going to listen anymore. But I think that it's a good point. I defended Kyrie for, needing to take some time away, especially in what has been a crazy, crazy year for a lot of people. And not many, people I felt like kind of related to exactly the point that I was making here. So I'll try and make it a little bit more clearly. Kyrie, took some time away from the team, needed to be away for his mental health. And that's what he said. And I know that there are videos that came out and said that he was doing other things, but he needed to be away from the team, needed to be away from the game for whatever reason. If, for example, a general manager had done the exact same thing. Let's just say the general manager of the Hawks says, you know what, I'm not in a good place right now. I can't perform well at my job. I need to step away. And let's just take the video part out of it. Let's just say that there's no party. There's no any of that. Would that general manager have faced the same level of criticism that Kyrie Irving faced for stepping away from his basketball team? I would make the case that no, and it wouldn't even be remotely close. And again, I know that it's probably not a great strategy to use James Harden and Kyrie Irving as your points of defense here, But I think those are two examples that, even as in some people's opinions egregious of a, disrespect to their respective franchises as those two were, I think you can still use them as a way to prove the point that Draymond was making initially. Now, if you go and look at these comments on Twitter or otherwise, and you look at some of the replies, there's a lot of typical stuff here, right? Oh, these guys get paid a ton of money. Why are they unhappy? They're just employees of the league. And I think that's a funny distinction to make. I think that's a funny comparison and a parallel to make between, well, they're an employee, and at my job, if I, don't act a certain way or don't do what I need to do, the company can fire me, and that's an extension there in the NBA. The funny thing to me is the fact that that is seen as acceptable and something that is that flawed is used as a reasoning, as an argument, in contrast to what Draymond Green is trying to say. Because I can promise you that there are people watching this video right now that work a 9-to-5 job and in the past have been afraid for their job security simply for looking for better opportunities. You feel the need to hide the fact that you're looking for better opportunities. Maybe you're looking for a promotion, or you're looking, at other companies, you're looking at other job opportunities, and you are, afraid for your own job security as a result of that, and the company can fire you at any point, whether it be for any number of causes. And you're using that example, which is not a great one, by the way. It's not something that we should be promoting or preaching as acceptable, as a way to disprove what Draymond Green is saying, as if that is an acceptable thing. Yes, they are employees, and yes, players at the end of the bench can be cut, and any player can be traded anytime. We're understanding of that. I understand that's a business, but to compare that to a 9-to-5 job in which, there's this very flawed idea that you can't actively look for opportunities that are better for yourself and the company you're currently working in. I don't think that's a great comparison to try and make your point here and make your argument. And I think in contrast, it actually makes Draymond's point better, because that is such a flawed concept. And I think that extends to the league as well. Now, at the end of the day, yes, these NBA players live fantastic lives, and maybe they shouldn't be complaining as much as they do. Maybe there shouldn't be as much player empowerment as there is. If you want to make that argument, that's fine. But I think specifically as it relates to what Draymond is talking about, as he is most of the time, he's spot on here. And I think he's showing why he's going to be one of the better, media personalities in the league once he retires, if that's something that he chooses to go into, because I think this is a very perceptive thing for him to point out. Players get fined all the time if they publicly request a trade, or if they say something incorrect about a team or about a franchise or about officials, and teams are allowed to constantly work, behind the scenes to get players traded, or working on different trades for different teams, and maybe not always treating players with the utmost respect in terms of when they find out that they've been traded, whether it be, as Draymond mentions in his comments, players finding out in interviews or in the middle of a game that they have been traded. And teams don't get criticized for that. Imagine if a player in the middle of the game was like, you know what, go ahead and trade me. I don't want to be here anymore. They would get absolutely destroyed for that. And there have been teams that have traded players in the middle of games, or they didn't tell a player directly that they were traded, and there's little to no criticism. And I think that's the core of the argument. And, if you want to get upset about, the privileged lives that players lead, and they make all this money and they complain too much, I guess you can have that conversation if you want to. But as it relates to the core of what Draymond was saying, which is, if a player and a team act in the exact same way, obviously it's different circumstances, but they show the same level of disrespect to the other in the same situation, the criticism of the player is going to be way more publicly and by the media and by everybody else than the criticism of the team would be. And I don't think that's an arguable point. I think that's 100% spot on. There are things that teams can get away with that players can't, and there are things that aren't all that bad, or arguably aren't bad at all, that players do that they get criticized for, that if a team did something similar, they wouldn't be criticized for at all. I think that's the point that Draymond's making. He's not trying to say that Harden handled the situation extremely well. He's not trying to say that Kyrie Irving handled his situation extremely well. He's just trying to make the case that either, lower your criticism level of players or raise your criticism level of teams when it comes to similar mistakes or similar levels of disrespect as it relates to the other. And I think that's a spot on point. I think he's 100% right in the comments that he made. And that's just my opinion. I'm interested to see down in the comment section below what you guys have to say, what your potential counter arguments would be. Because for me, I feel like Draymond was 100% right on this one, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then check out more from me. The box is on screen as well as on the channel as a whole. As I said in the beginning, my name is Tucker. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you want to hang out with me outside of these videos, you can check out the link tree to all of my socials in the description at the bottom of the screen. And with all those things said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.